Modern grain fields can give up to 8 tons per hectare, but this ancient grain only gives 1 or 2. So why did poor towns keep planting it? What was so special that nobody wanted to lose it? Why do scientists keep talking about bringing it back? There's something here most people totally miss, and it might shock you. If a grain like this kept entire villages alive on stone-hard land, and we let it disappear, that should scare you a little. If you care about the knowledge that once kept people alive, subscribe now, because the next part of this story changes everything you think you know about bread. How did a tough little grain feed whole villages when nothing else would? Einkorn wheat goes way back. Humans grew it 10,000 years ago near a mountain in Turkey. And some say people picked it wild 30,000 years before that. Think about that for a second. That means this grain stuck around through ice ages, bad droughts, and all kinds of chaos. Yet it always ended up back in the kitchen. What makes this grain so stubborn? Why did people keep coming back to it when the ground felt like stone and nothing else wanted to grow? Scientists say einkorn loves the places most crops hate. It can handle poor, rocky soil, very little rain, and cold winds, land that feels more like broken bricks than dirt. Imagine farming where every step hits a rock, but somehow your grain still grows. That's what einkorn does. It started in the Fertile Crescent, then spread to the Balkans and Central Europe. People kept planting it in rough, chilly spots all the way into the 1900s. The deal was simple. If you could get even 1 to 2 tons per hectare on junk land, that was better than some fancy crop that gave you 0. And 1 hectare is about 1.5 football fields, so even a bad patch kept the village fed. Today, the world grows about 800 million tons of wheat each year on 220 million hectares, and wheat gives us 20% of our calories and protein. That huge system started with tiny fields and a grain that could handle pain. So why walk away from a crop that saved villages on the toughest land? The answer actually hurts, and the first reason sounds smart until you feel the cost. Why did people dump the grain that fed them when nothing else would? If a crop keeps your kids full when other wheat just dies, why would you trade it for something that fails as soon as things get rough? On paper, einkorn loses the yield race. Modern wheat in a good system gives you 7 or 8 tons per hectare. Einkorn on the same land gives maybe 1 to 2 tons, sometimes 2.6 to 3.5 in strong research plots in Italy, but always behind the modern stuff. That changes what gets planted. When you've got deep, rich soil and lots of fertilizer, you chase the grain that gives the biggest pile for every truck. That's why old hulled wheats like einkorn and emmer got replaced by hullless types, like bread wheat and durum, which love those high input systems. Status made the gap wider. In medieval Europe, dark, heavy bread from things like rye, spelt, or old wheat meant you were poor. Rich folks wanted soft white bread, and that only comes from special wheat. So, the old grains got shoved off the main table and called minor crops, left to survive in the backcountry. By the 1900s, studies only found ancient wheats in remote, tough areas, sometimes places where families kept them alive since the Bronze Age. Let that hit you. The grain that rescued hungry towns got shoved to the edge, even when people still needed it. Today, almost all the wheat comes from a short list of superstar crops, and that works great, until the year turns mean. But what really happens when the weather turns on you? Because one crop just keeps standing there, and most people miss the secret. What makes this scruffy grain the last thing standing when weather destroys the rest? Late frosts, early snow, sudden rain. Any one of these can wipe out a whole season's work. Why does einkorn, that rough-looking grain, stay standing when others fall? Researchers found that einkorn was grown in cool, rough spots all across the Middle East and Southwest Europe, places where most crops struggle. In Italy today, you'll still find einkorn in fields so harsh that modern wheat just gives up. And when the soil is thin and tired, scientists see these old grains still pull 2 to 3 tons per hectare and meet good quality standards. On rich land, modern wheat leaves einkorn in the dust. But in bad years, on bad dirt, the yield gap gets tiny. That changes everything if you depend on your field to eat. Einkorn has another trick. It works in dual-use systems. Farmers let animals graze the green plants, then still harvest grain later. If you've got a bad year, that flexibility means you can still feed your family and your animals, something modern wheat isn't great at. A recent study called einkorn, a high-protein ancient wheat with superior nutritional quality, and said it works well on poor soils, low fertilizer, and resists pests. When lowland fields flop, these scruffy hill plots keep cranking out their usual 2 tons. For a village, that kind of reliability is worth more than a record crop that only happens once in a while. Modern farming chases big highs. People on stone hills just wanted something steady. So why did someone show up and tell them to rip it all out? Why did farmers get told to rip out the tough grain for better seed that needs more help? From the 1960s, everything changed fast. The Green Revolution brought in new wheat seeds that could take loads of fertilizer and not fall over. This new wheat made yields jump by over 20% in places like India and Mexico. Suddenly, poor countries grew way more wheat. It sounded amazing. But these high-yield types come with a price. They need tons of fertilizer, irrigation, and pesticides. They also fit better in big farms, with big machines and big mills. Old hulled wheats like einkorn need more work to clean and store, so they never fit into the new, fast, uniform system. Reviews say farmers abandoned hulled wheats for hull-less bread and durum wheat, which do better with heavy chemicals. Global wheat scaled fast, and the system standardized around a few varieties. Policy pushed only a few star varieties, never the grains that kept tiny hill farms alive. Today, einkorn and emmer just survive in mountain zones where nothing else pays, and in pockets of Turkey where they started. The message became, plant modern seed, buy the chemicals, and sell to the mill. The old bread faded from the plate, and your body felt the change, even if nobody warned you about it. But the old grain gave something the soft white bread can't match, and the proof hides in every crumb. Okay, if this is blowing your mind, just wait. The wildest part of this story is coming up, and you're going to want to see what happens next. What did stone soil bread give the body that soft white loaves can't? Why does one slice of bread keep you full, and another just disappears in your stomach? What if the old bread packed more real stuff in every bite? Studies show einkorn, emmer, and Khorasan wheat have way more lutein pigment than modern bread wheat. Lutein helps your eyes and cells. One lab test found einkorn tops all checked wheats for lutein, zeaxanthin, beta-carotene, and strong vitamin E compounds called tocotrienols. Then there's the protein story. Some tables show einkorn has about 30% more protein than modern wheat, plus more fatty acids, phosphorus, potassium, vitamin B6, and carotenoids. In some organic trials, protein reached 19 to 21%. No wonder old bread feels heavy, it was. Whole grain studies link eating these grains to lower heart disease, diabetes, weight gain, and some cancers. So, when your main bread has more protein and minerals, you get a real upgrade. People argue about gluten too. Einkorn has more protein and gluten than regular wheat, but a different balance, less gluten strength. Some research says people with wheat sensitivity might handle ancient wheat better, but it's still not safe for celiac disease. So that dark, heavy bread from rocky fields gave more nutrition for every bite. But the big question is, who really wins from switching away? Who really profited? When villages forgot the one grain that never failed them? Who loves crops that act the same everywhere? Who hates grains that grow in little patches nobody can control? Modern wheat fits the big system. Seed companies sell uniform varieties. Chemical firms sell their packages, and huge mills want standard grain. Old grains like einkorn have tight husks, grow in random patches, and never fit the one-size factory model. Reviews call out how dropping these grains lost valuable foods and even wiped out genetic diversity. In Europe, common wheat and spelt cover over 24 million hectares. Einkorn and emmer, tiny blips, barely counted. On 221 million global wheat hectares, einkorn doesn't even show up. That tells you who holds the power. History says this is not new. In medieval Germany, Church elites controlled rye surpluses for power. Medieval charters show grain storage, moving from local barns to central granaries, run by rulers. So grain became a tool to control people. When the world swapped many local grains for one global wheat stream, the rules changed. Prices, storage, trade, now controlled by a few big players. Ancient grains like einkorn fight that because they grow on small, rough farms, often under 8 hectares in Turkey. Next time prices jump, remember how one region can shake bread for everyone. That proof is in a year you still remember. What happens when one bad harvest in a key region breaks bread for whole countries? In March 2022, global food prices hit a peak. By 2025, they were still about 7 to 8% higher than the year before. When wheat prices spike, every trip to the store hurts more. War or drought in just one region can shake the world. Russia and Ukraine together supply about 30% of all wheat exports. If trouble hits them, drought, war, blocked ports, bread prices jump everywhere. World cereal production reached 9.9 billion tons in 2023, up 27% since 2010. But most of that comes from just 3 crops: maize, wheat, and rice. It feels like lots of choice, but it's really a thin base, and that makes us all more fragile. Even health worries are built into that base. Breeding for yield and white color cut down minerals and other good stuff in modern wheat. Some protein changes might even be behind stomach problems for some people. When people say bread feels fake and leaves them hungry, the science backs that up. Bringing back old grains like einkorn widens the safety net. More genetic diversity, better nutrients, different stress responses. Researchers say they're great for low-input farming on bad land, still giving 2 to 3 tons per hectare, plus food for animals. So today's shocks partly come from old choices, parking tough grains on the edge and betting big on a few types. That sets up a question that's both simple and scary. What happens if we start planting this ancient grain on dead, dry hills? Again, the world has 1.6 billion hectares of cropland and 3.2 billion of meadows and pastures. Most is bad land for modern wheat. Thin soil, steep hills, too dry. That's where einkorn already proved itself for thousands of years. Modern research calls einkorn high-protein ancient wheat, with better nutrition than bread or durum wheat. More protein, more antioxidants, more minerals. It adapts to poor soils, needs less chemical help, and handles pests better. That matters when fertilizer gets expensive. People are starting to bring it back in small ways. Low input, organic, or no pesticide farming. In Central Europe, some trials saw farmers get only a little less yield than modern wheat, but with way less chemical use. That changes the whole risk game, especially when things get tough. Even if a tiny slice of all those dry hills grew a grain, giving 1 to 3 tons per hectare, with more protein and color, it won't replace modern wheat. But it would put thousands of small safety nets back in place. That means bread that stays when trucks can't run, seed farmers can save, and food with real nutrition, not just empty calories. For you, it means more choices over time. Dark bread, pasta from old wheat, porridge that actually fills you up. It means a food system that breaks less, even when the world shakes. Because the tough little grain never stopped working. People just stopped looking. Now the final choice is yours. Will you bring back the rock grain that fed whole villages, or keep running the same thin line? What you do next could change how safe, how real, and how full your food feels, maybe for good. If this made you question what's in your food, let us know below. Want more stories like this? Hit the next video and keep going with us. Thanks for watching.